So this is me. It's 3:10 in the morning and I am 20 minutes behind schedule. Now, what am I doing? That's a very reasonable question because 3:10 in the morning is not a time for a normal human to be awake, much less sneaking out a door. Well, I was headed off to complete something that had been 5 years in the dreaming, 2 years of active training. That is the 74-mile run of the PCT's J-Section from Snoqualmie Pass to Stevens Pass here in Washington State. So let's rewind this all the way back to figure out how this started. In 2017, I had gone on a really awesome backpacking trip in the Alpine Lakes region of the Cascades here. Yeah, I was looking for new stuff. So I was pulling out some maps and looking around and trying to find other peaks and lakes and stuff that look cool. And I just kind of noticed this one line going all the way through. And that would be the PCT, the Pacific Crest Trail, which is a 2,000-mile hike that begins in Mexico and goes all the way to Canada. As I'm looking through, I noticed this one section that goes between Snoqualmie and Stevens. Oh, that's not, how far is that? So I went and did a little bit of research and discovered that it was about 74 miles, which at that point in my life was like, oh, that's too far to do in a push. But at the same point, it also just kind of like stuck in the back of my brain there. And then, you know, a lot of life happened. We had a kid. I photographed a lot of weddings. We traveled the world. I worked for nonprofits. I did fun things with my friends. And then there was this pandemic.
The breaking news, stay at home, that is the order tonight.
The seriousness of this virus hammered home tonight in a way few could have imagined.
Yeah, that one. You might have heard of it. Especially in those early times, I was depressed because this business that I had spent the last decade building seemed to be crumbling around me. And I didn't know what to do. So I started running because I needed something to stay sane. I had nothing else to do. And then also we just needed to get out of the house. And it just gave me so much life. I felt so good. I had something to do. I had something to invest in. And it was awesome. I ended up finishing 1,000 miles that year.
Woo! 1,000 miles! That really is cool!
And then I started looking into 2021. And for my 35th birthday, I thought, oh, it'd be a super fun idea. I'm gonna run 35 miles for my 35th birthday. And I did. I got injured. I learned a lot, but I did it. And when I finished, that little thing in the back of my mind of, hey, you remember that J-Section thing that you were thinking about? What about that? Let's think about that again. And so I chatted with Erica and because at that point we only had one kid, like, well, let's go for it. So I started training. And I trained hard and brought my weekly miles up from 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 miles a week, which is something that was just like bonkers to me at that point. And I was preparing to do it in September. I built myself a team. I did big training runs in the mountains, doing 50 miles.
I just ran 50 miles.
Running the enchantments and stuff. And had Joel and Elliot coming out there, and then the weather said no. And yeah, actually, old me can probably explain my disappointment better. I know it's the right decision to not do this run. Like, it's really obviously not. It's actually helpful because it's so obviously impossible to do it this weekend. Then I finished the 2021 and started looking at 2022 and kind of started to ramp up again. And was thinking like, yeah, maybe we'll go for this again. And then we're pregnant again. And it became very obvious that if I wanted a shot at this, it needed to happen in 2022. And beyond just like training, I also did a few other things. Like I ran a mountain marathon, I ran a 50K, I ran around the Lewitt Trail, which is the one around Mount St. Helens. I, in May, ran a 111-mile week, which again, the year before, I was like, 70 miles is so many, and 111 miles. This time, the same people, Joel and Elliot, were unable to gear up and do it again. So I had a new team that I built out. And looking at August, I had my friend Kevin, who was just kind of like an all-around mountain athlete who was going to run the ending 25 miles with me. So I'm still going northbound from Snoqualmie to Stevens. So I'd run the first 45, 50-ish miles by myself and then pick up Kevin and he would finish it with me. And then my buddy Andrew was going to be our support person and just kind of help us be able to facilitate the day. But with the baby looming, it definitely made this like very awkward timing of like, I have to wait until the trail fully melts out. But then if we're too close to the due date, I kind of have to wait till after he was born. On August 12th, my son Nico was born, and on August 21st, Kevin and Andrew and I piled into a car and drove up to Snoqualmie Pass to spend the night and prepare to run it the next morning. But yeah, it's daunting. There's something weird about sitting here and being ready to do a thing you've planned on for so long. That's both what's most exciting and most terrifying about this particular like endeavor and try and stuff, is that I've been working on this for so long. And I think I'm ready, but you never know you're fully ready until you actually go out there. And every training run, every whatever, especially the closer I get, the more I'm overthinking everything. And the more every little bit that like, oh, my legs are a little bit tired. Am I gonna burn out? And, oh, I'm a little bit thirsty. My heart rate is a touch too high. All those stresses just feel so much more magnified right now, just because I am so close and so almost ready to go for it. That every one of those things feels like it's almost this death knell of this plan. But at the same point, I really think I'm gonna be okay and it's gonna go well. It's been a big journey and it's been a bit to get me to this point, but I guess I'm as ready as I'm gonna be to try. And so that brings us back to 3:10 a.m., 20 minutes late, leaving the condo.
All right, I guess I'm doing this.
There's a weird feeling about anything that you've planned for a really long time, anything you dreamt up for a really long time, and when it actually starts to happen, it feels so surreal. The 1 mile run from the condo to the trailhead is a thing that I honestly can't really remember it, because I kind of felt like I was floating and in this weird haze of like, this thing I have thought about for so long, I have obsessed about for so long, is actually happening, and I kind of didn't know how to process it until all of a sudden I'm standing in front of that 74-mile sign, taking a selfie on my disposable camera and turning around and starting up the hill.
We're doing this. Like, I'm about an hour and a half into the run, and man, I can't believe this is actually happening after all these years of training. It's mind-blowing. Got a little bit later start than I hoped for, because I slept through my alarm somehow, or it like got snoozed. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I'm going, and I'm hitting, this is kind of the last spot where I can see the highway from the trail before it disappears, and I have 70 more miles of wilderness. It's one of my favorite places in Washington. Just this viewpoint is unreal. This is where this thing gets real.
So at this point, I was feeling really good. I could tell that I was a touch off the pace that I was hoping for, and it had been a very uphill section, so it felt within the range of what seemed normal, so I wasn't overthinking about it, but also I'm not gonna set the fastest known time or something like that, so I was perfectly okay just going.
When it comes to your place, if I go within a couple miles, I swear I lose control. It's bad for me, I know.
Well, this point right here is the furthest I've ever gone on this trail in training before. So from here on out, it's all new. Really excited to see it.
I don't look at Volkswagens quite the same. When I see one, I wonder if it's yours, or if my mind's playing games. And when I hear your name, I still flinch, but I'm sure I'll get used to it.
Then I came around Chickaman Peak and crested this little ridge, began my first actual descent of the hike. And it was cool because it was a fun moment. It was like the sun was out, it was super pretty. There was all these through hikers who were coming up the pass and going southbound and stuff. So it was fun to chat with them. And just this warm, glowy light. But then as I looked off in the distance, I could see Cathedral Rock, which is where I was gonna meet up with Kevin and Andrew, and Kevin would continue running with me. And from that spot, it didn't look that far away, like 10 miles or so, but it also was a little daunting knowing that I probably had like 30 miles of weaving and climbing and stuff, and yeah, like 9,000 feet of climbing. So yeah, it was both, oh, it's not that far, but also like, oh, it's really far simultaneously.
get used to it.
Man, the myth, legend, Scott Krantz, everybody.
It was super funny to run into Scott, to see people you know on the trail. Like, Pacific Northwest is actually tiny, and especially when you're out in the mountains, it is inevitable that I will see people I know. So, but it was especially what was cool about this, like to be running that thing and have Scott be like, "Oh, is today the day? Is this the thing you're planning for?" Because, like, you know, I've talked about them to like have a friend who like didn't otherwise know that I was doing this thing, be able to be like, "You're doing it. You're actually doing it." Felt really awesome.
Tiger on the prowl, I'ma make it go wild. I'm original, and I told you so. I'm a kid in the candy store, with the leather on the denim. I ain't the cure, I'm the venom. If you wanna find me, find the taillight. Something's coming in, you're gonna wanna take a red eye. It's time to go. It's time to go. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready. Don't blink, don't blink. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready. Don't blink, don't blink. I don't wait for nobody. I'm a summer name on the dotty. City lights call my name, drawn to the flame, and I'm feeling kinda naughty. I hit the ground running. Step out the door and I'm stunning. Better hold tight cause you know what's going down. I'm setting the pace cause this is my
So
time.
I finished the summit of the second of 3 really difficult climbs. Oh my. I did not film very much because that just was a brutal one. And I know the next one is going to be just as hard. So I'm going to just keep moving. It's probably going to be a little bit off the pace I was hoping for, but that's not the point. This is crazy beautiful. I'm blown away that my body is holding up. And even though I'm tired and slow, I'm still moving. And anytime I can actually run, that feels really good. So this is actually kind of flat. So I'm gonna put the phone away and go do that.
This is where I made my first big mistake of the day. I knew the map really well. I have looked at this thing so many times. And I had judged that to get off of Escondido Peak, which is where I was, to get down to the river down below, I thought that it would take me about an hour. And I figured that running for an hour downhill, I probably only needed a little bit of water and just filled up my one like front pocket bottle. I didn't fill up my big bladder on the back. In hindsight, I look at it, I'm like, that's super stupid. Why didn't you just put more water in there? But also in that moment, I was like, why would I want so much extra water like sloshing around? It's gonna be a really easy trail, but it's gonna be floppy and stuff, it'd be annoying. But that thing that I thought would only be an hour of descending turned out to be a little over 2. And by the time I got down to actually fill up with water, I mean, I was practically licking puddles. I was so thirsty.
Well, I've reached the point of the day. It's time to eat a Snickers. Oh, I'm tired. Nothing makes you feel better than a Snickers.
So yeah, I needed that Snickers. I like really needed that Snickers. I have this little trick that whenever I'm doing athletic stuff, I either think about something sad or super happy. And if I can do that and I hold my emotions together and just like, oh yeah, that's super happy, and then move on, I'm probably doing okay. But if I start to tear up for either of those things, it's usually a sign that I'm not in a good spot and I probably should take time, really assess and get myself back to a good place before continuing on.
Oh, I am way behind where I hope to be time-wise. Which is fine. Doesn't matter. I'm here to enjoy this. That last descent it lasted forever. Oh boy. I just kept singing the Barney song. It's a song that never ends, but this is the descent that never ends. It just goes on and on, my friends. Some people started going down, not knowing what it was, and it will continue on descending forever just because this is the descent that never ends. And that's how I entertain myself for 2 hours. But now that's done, it's time to start climbing. And at the top of this climb is a beer and my friends. I am so excited to see them. Oh, there comes the waterworks. Yep, getting emotional. That's usually a sign that I probably should eat some more food. So more Snickers time. I don't know. I've definitely never cried eating a Snickers before.
This is where I should have stopped. There was like one of the last stream crossings was right in that area. And I should have basically drank all the water I had and eaten some more calories and then filled up and started again. But I just kept going.
I feel awful. I don't know if I didn't eat enough food or drink enough water, but it's not good. Pretty sure once I get up to Garrett and Andrew on top of that mountain up there, I'm gonna have to DNF this. I'm just so deep in the road right now. I don't think I can get back out of it to continue. That sucks.
Eventually, I finally found a water source and was able to stop and refill.
Well, feeling a little better. Stopped for water and coming out of it, I feel like a different person. So now comes the question, how long does this second win last? Is it worth going for it? Pushing on till 11 or midnight? Or do I call it?
As I'm entering now, the final mile of this last climb up to Cathedral Rock, which is the third like major climb at the beginning of this trail, I met up with Kevin and Andrew, and they were coming down the trail. And it was this funny moment of like, I'd been depressed and been tired and been crying and stuff, and to hear just these happy voices come boop, ba-doop, 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 down the trail, and like I grabbed my camera out and could like snap this photo. It's not a great photo, but that doesn't matter, of Kevin and just like, I have friends again. Once we got to the top, I had some ramen and I had a Rainier, and I felt a lot better. Big surprise, you put a bunch of carbs into your body on a day like that, you're probably gonna feel it. It's probably what I needed. At that point, I had really been considering calling it a day, but I was feeling a lot better. And so Kevin and I started running and started going north together. My original goal had been to do this whole thing in 18 to 20 hours. And I knew that that was pretty much thrown out the window at this point. So I was just hoping to try to finish. So we kept on going and watched the light fade through the valley, and by about 9 p.m. we had our headlamps on. It was really awesome to be running with Kevin, and I had been alone, I had been tired, I'd been in my own head, but it was really nice to have another voice. Now, Kevin is a great storyteller, and so it was exactly the person that I needed to help keep my mind off and just tell me the stories of your adventures from your travels and stuff from the past. But the hard thing about this is, A, he had not already invested 50 miles into the day, and he's a little bit younger than I am, and bodies are different. He didn't need to eat and drink quite as much as I did. And I think that mixed with my just like enjoying of the stories, I then proceeded to not ingest as many calories as I should have. I did not drink as much water as I should have. And so I kind of hit like a second bonk.
So I'm falling apart. Barely taking any videos in the last while. It's just been, so we kept going for it, and it's just been so slow and such a slog. And we're still 16 miles away from being done, which at the pace we're going is 4.5, 5 hours. And I do not have 5 more hours of walking in me. So we're trying to find a bailout point so that we can get down to our pickup and call it a success, because I don't know, arbitrary goals kind of arbitrary endings, right? But while I'm waiting for the plan to be made, stars are pretty, which is cool.
In the dark, sitting on top of that peak, we made the decision that rather than continuing all the way to Stevens Pass as we originally expected to finish, we were going to move down to Highway 2, which is the highway, and exit at a slightly different point a little bit earlier and not quite finish the trail to the point that I had expected to finish at. And that was hard. Obviously it was hard. I've been training for so long. I've been investing so much into this huge day, but I also had this peace about it on that, because I knew it would be really easy for me to look back and be like, this day was a failure. But I really had this feeling of this day was as much of a success as it could be, and I needed to accept that and move on. So we began running downhill, and it was a bit of a brutal downhill. I mean, I think it was 4,000 feet of descending in that hour and a half, 2 hours and stuff to get down. And at 2 a.m., our headlamps bobbed into the parking lot where Ben and Garrett were waiting for us to drive us back to Seattle.
You made it, buddy.
69 miles, 69.4.
Damn!
Nice.
Woo!
All work, man. All work.
How we feeling?
I can do a couple more.
This is not much of a trail. Like, if you didn't have the GPS and you were hiking through this after.
So that was it. It was done. 5 years of planning, 2 years of training, hundreds of runs, worrying through multiple pairs of shoes, so much stress, and it's over. That leads to the big question of how do I feel about all this? And I have a lot of thoughts. About me, I don't really like races that much. I know there's a lot of people who really enjoy that, or races are a motivator for you to train. It's just like, that doesn't do it for me. I can run on my own because I like running. And that's not a knock against other people, it's just the way that my brain works. But one thing about running a race is that it sets a finish line. And that's great because it gives you a goal, it gives you something to work for, but it also creates this like way stronger feeling of if you don't get to the finish line, it was a failure. And one thing that I really appreciate about making my own adventures and making my own goals and making my own days in the mountains and these kind of things that I'm doing is that I get to set the start line, I get to set the finish line, and I get to decide if it's a success or not. And with that decision of what is the success, it's not that I'm trying to get to an end line because I want to get a t-shirt or I want a medal or something like that. I get to make that decision. And on that day, that 70 miles was all I could do. That is all I could succeed at, and that's okay. Another thing that I struggle with the concept of like races is that it puts so much emphasis on the day itself. And even looking at this project, like it's really easy for me to look back and only focus on those 70 miles that I did between the condo and when I got into Ben's car. But the reality is that the success is those 2 years of training. It's all the adventures that I did. It's the amount of time that I spent in the mountains. It's the trips through the enchantments. It's the 50 miles. It's the hours and hours of pounding the Burt Gilman in the dark here in Seattle. Like that's the success. That's the joy. That's the thing that I'm most proud of, is it's not just that I succeeded in it, but it's all the buildup that got to it. It's so easy to only focus on that little piece. When you're allowing competition to get into that, like it becomes way more about that because it is a competition. And this is not a competition. And like even in training and talking stuff, like so many people ask, oh, Joe, when's your race? It's not a race. Joe, when you do that big race? I'm not doing a race. And like I really wanted that to be an important thing because it's not a race. There is no way I can win this because there's no winning. It's just being able to get out there and do what I can. And beyond that, being able to enjoy the journey to get to that day and to enjoy every other step of the probably millions of steps that I took to get there. Runner's punch. Another thing I learned about this is that I can dig way deeper than I thought. I mean, you saw the video where I was crying eating a Snickers. That's not a thing a normal person does. Who cries eating a Snickers? That's supposed to be super happy. Even for me, like I ate the Snickers because I thought it would make me happy. But it's the face of somebody who's pushing deeper and harder on a thing than they knew that they would be able to. And the weird thing I look back on, like coming out of it and like recovery, I was running 2 days later. And I never felt any cramps through the entirety of that day in the mountains. But it took me like 2 months to get back to be able to run the same pace at the same heart rate that I was before that thing started. It just shows how much of the main effort that you can put into your body and how much of that like deep level ability that we don't really tap into very often. But to see how much of that like reserve I tapped into that day, it just took a long time to build that back. And so it's just really impressive to see like what my body can do, and not just like my body, but what the body can do, and be able to find that when you're in something that you're pushing yourself beyond limits that you thought you're capable of, how much reserves and how much is still there to keep pushing you through them. Running is also really solitary, and that's part of the reason I love it. Like I am a very big introvert. I like being myself. And as much as I'm talking to you right now, I am doing it from the safety of my office. There are other people who are good at making running into a social endeavor, whether that's joining running clubs or people who like run a lot of races because there's community involved in that kind of stuff, or just have friends that I go out and do it with. I definitely have social anxiety of that I will not be at the same pace as other people, and that fear of being found out as a fraud is strong. And so like the thought of like going out and maybe they'll be way faster than me and they'll smoke me like scares me a lot. And naming that is probably a thing that's good, and figuring out how to get past that is also really good. But that is a part of my training and a part of who I am. And so throughout these 2 years, 95% of my runs have been alone. And that's fun, but it's also lonely. And then to come to the actual day and to have so many friends step up and help meant a lot. It's hard when you're doing something by yourself because you're the only one that sees the success and you're the only one that cares. And then when you actually have to ask for help, to actually have your friends step up and be like, hey, yeah, I'm here to help you, like that feels awesome. And so I just have to say thank you to all of them. Thank you to Joel and Elliot for agreeing to do this back in 2021. Thank you to Kevin for running with me this year. Thank you to Andrew for being our support person. Thank you for Ben and Garrett for picking me up. Thank you to the Clark Shaw Williams family for letting us stay at your condo. Thank you to all the other people who I did run in the few times I did group things over the course of the year. And obviously, thank you to Erica for being a supportive partner and letting me do stupid stuff. So what's next? That's kind of the obvious question that like you get always like, oh, you finished it. What are you gonna do now? Well, first I'm gonna kind of revel in the fact that I did do it, which is really cool. Like this was hard. There's a lot of time. I invested a lot of time and a lot of money and I did it, and I want to revel in that a little bit. Number two, I'm gonna be a dad a lot. I am not gonna be running 70 miles a week just because I have 2 kids and I'm gonna be with both of them a lot. And that's just not gonna fit my schedule right now. But that day will come, and when I do, like the stuff I've learned about this trip, about how to train, about how to push, about how to safely enjoy the mountains, will help me be ready for that next thing. And honestly, as much as I consider this section and this goal complete, if I'm ever in the shape that I could do it again, I'd probably give it another shot and be able to actually compete the point to point that I'd originally dreamed up. But until that day, this is a success, and I hope that you can take this and go do cool things too.